I was in labor, the painful contractions coming like a wave that was unbearable. After 36 hours of struggling, I felt so tired that I had no strength to think. But now, I had only one goal: to meet my son, the child I had waited for all these months. My husband, Marcus, held my hand tightly. He stood beside me, his throat tight as he watched me suffer. Though his face was pale with worry, his eyes were filled with hope and encouragement. "You can do it, Evie. Just one more time and we'll see him," he whispered, his face almost melting with tension. Even though I was in excruciating pain, I felt a surge of strength within me. I took a deep breath and pushed again, my body tensing with each breath. I had no strength left to think. All I could feel was intense contractions deep in my stomach. The pain was unimaginable, but I knew my son was getting closer. Suddenly, the door to the delivery room swung open with a bang. Everyone in the room jumped, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw who was standing there. It was my mother-in-law, Judith. Her silver hair was disheveled, her face was contorted with anger, and her eyes flashed like a predator. She didn't knock, didn't ask permission. She barged into the delivery room as if she had every right to do so. "Mother!" Marcus yelled, but she didn't listen. Judith stormed in, her face set, her expensive handbag swinging. I couldn't understand what was happening. She was always in control of the family, but this time she was crossing a line that no one was allowed to cross. She pointed at me, her voice suddenly echoing in the quiet delivery room. "That's my daughter's child. She stole my child." All eyes were on her. The doctors and nurses stood frozen, not daring to move. It felt like the air had stopped, with only the sound of the fetal monitor echoing in the oppressive silence. My husband, Marcus, stood there, unable to do anything but stare at his mother, his mouth stammering, unable to say a word. I felt like I was struck by lightning. The child that I had carried in my womb for 9 months of painful struggle through each day was now considered by my mother-in-law as her own. What right did she have to barge into my delivery room when I was in the middle of pain and contractions? I felt like I had been stripped of all my strength, like my right to be a mother was taken away right at this sacred moment. "Mom, what are you doing? You have to get out." Marcus finally spoke, but his voice was choked with confusion. He didn't understand why his mother would do this. I looked at him, trying to find support in his eyes, but all I saw was confusion and fear. Judith refused to back down. "She's taking my baby. She's taken my daughter's baby." She didn't let go, her eyes never leaving mine. I felt my blood freeze as if I couldn't breathe. Dr. Winters walked toward us, her voice calm but clear. "You need to leave here immediately, or we will call security." But before she could act, Judith approached me, her eyes fixed on my body and the baby I was giving birth to. She tried to reach out and snatch my baby from the doctor's hands. That feeling, like I was being robbed of my motherhood. I couldn't let this happen. The pain and fear were so mixed together that I couldn't move or breathe properly. I looked at my husband again, hoping he would compartment his mother again. But he just stood there, looking at his mother with a blank expression, not daring to intervene. And in that moment, what I feared most happened. Judith lost everything. My unborn son stopped moving. The silence shook me. I couldn't hear him cry anymore. Everything stopped for a second that lasted forever. When I woke up from the coma, the pain in my body was not as intense as before, but I felt an indescribable emptiness. Even though I had survived the dramatic moment of birth, I knew I could not rest easy. My son, Ethan, was still in the intensive care unit. I could not shake the image of the baby, motionless in the doctor's arms. The nightmare was not over yet, and I sensed that the secrets around me were only just beginning to be revealed. Judith's words, Her criticisms and baseless accusations still echoed in my head. My daughter's child, she had said. But I knew it wasn't. My son is mine, and no one can take that away. No matter what, I will protect it. I couldn't stop thinking about my mother-in-law. It couldn't have been worse if she hadn't barged into the delivery room. But then, as I dug deeper, another big question began to pop into my head. What exactly was Marcus and Lisa's relationship like? How did Judith know so much about Lisa when it was clear their relationship had ended 5 years ago? I spent the night thinking, unable to sleep despite my extreme fatigue. I wondered if there was something I didn't know about Marcus and Lisa, about his past that I hadn't been told. Even though Marcus always insisted that he loved me and that we had overcome all the challenges of infertility to have Ethan, I couldn't help but question what Judith had said in the delivery room. Lisa told me everything, Judith said, startling me. Lisa was Marcus's ex-girlfriend, and I knew that their relationship had lasted for 3 years before they broke up. But it wasn't like I didn't know about the past. We had talked about it, about his past, about his failed relationships. But I had never heard about the frozen sperm thing. Despite my suspicions, I couldn't just sit there and let the confusion take over. I decided to do some research. With the help of a few simple tools and techniques, I found out that Lisa was still using Marcus's last name in her work records. This couldn't be a coincidence. How could she still keep his last name if there was no longer a relationship? That was the first sign that caught my attention. I looked up more information about Lisa. After a few minutes of searching the internet, I discovered that she was an expert in the field of developmental psychology and that she had recently completed an important study. Notably, her latest paper had a photo attached, and the person standing next to her was none other than my mother-in-law, Judith. The paper was about a groundbreaking study in the field of genetic memory in infants, and Judith was listed as the director of a foundation that funded this research. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I realized that there was a secret connection between them. Judith and Lisa were not just friends. They might have had a deeper relationship that I was unaware of. That was when I began to understand that it might not have been just an accident in the delivery room. Even though doubts were starting to flare up inside me, I tried to stay calm. I needed to have a face-to-face conversation with Marcus. I couldn't continue living in this uncertainty. I needed an explanation from him right now. When I asked him to sit down and talk to me, he seemed hesitant, as if he was trying to avoid a truth he knew well. I looked into his eyes, trying to read his mind. "Marcus," I began, my voice shaking, "your mother said she found out everything from Lisa, and she told me about your frozen sperm. Is that true?" Marcus looked down, not daring to look straight at me. "EVU?" He hesitated and then sighed softly. "I don't know where to start. I never told you because I didn't think it was important." "It doesn't matter?" I cut him off, angrier than ever. "I'm pregnant with your child, Marcus. It's the most important thing in our lives. Why are you keeping this from me?" Marcus bowed his head, his eyes full of remorse. "I know you won't understand, but when Lisa and I broke up, we decided to keep some of her sperm for her since she couldn't have children naturally. I thought it was a way to help her. But when we broke up, I forgot all about it." It felt like a slap in the face. "So you kept those sperm samples and didn't tell me?" I gasped, betrayal washing over me. "And now your mother is using it to blame me. You know, Marcus, I feel like I'm not your wife anymore. I feel like I'm just a replacement." He was silent, not knowing how to respond. I stood up and turned away from him, not wanting to see his expression anymore. "I can't go on like this," I said, my voice choking. I need time to think about everything. After that tense confrontation, I felt like a part of myself had been ripped away. My relationship with Marcus had never been one of ambiguity, but now I was unsure of anything. I began to wonder if what Judith had said was true, or if it was just baseless accusations. Late one night, as I was sitting on the sofa in the living room, my eyes accidentally glanced at Marcus's phone, where there was an unread message from Lisa. I didn't mean to do so, but when the phone was right in front of me, I couldn't help but look. And that's when I discovered everything. It was messages from Lisa, promises between them of a different future, plans I never knew about. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Their relationship wasn't just an old story. They had reunited in a relationship that had no place for me. I felt trapped in a web of lies and deceit. But what hurt me the most was Marcus's silence. He said nothing when I confronted him about all that I had discovered. He stood there like a puppet, unable to protest, unable to say anything. My life is no longer the same. The happy days with Marcus and the light conversations we had together seem like distant memories. After discovering all the secrets and lies from my husband, I can no longer live in a relationship that I cannot trust. The promises he once made to me are now empty. The only thing I can do now is to protect my son and seek justice. My son, Ethan, is now facing a life or death battle in the intensive care unit. I cannot let those around me hurt him any further. My mother-in-law, Judith, violated my parental rights from the moment of birth. She not only hurt me, but also put my son in danger. I cannot let her get away with this without paying the price. Marcus, meanwhile, continued to avoid me. He tried to make peace, but I knew I couldn't continue to turn a blind eye to his family's wrongdoings. I decided to take action. As soon as Marcus left the hospital room, I started contacting lawyers. Simone, an old friend of mine and a talented lawyer, agreed to help. She listened to me tell her everything that had happened and immediately realized that my case was not a simple one. "Evelyn, we are not just fighting for custody of your children," Simone said, her voice full of determination. "We are fighting for justice, for the truth. What they did is unacceptable." I felt a little comforted by these words because at least I knew I wasn't alone in this fight. Simone promised to help me gather evidence from text conversations to every document related to Marcus's sperm storage. It wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't back down. A few days later, Marcus approached me. I didn't want to see him, but I knew I had to confront him to sort out the remaining issues. When he walked into the room, his eyes were filled with worry and regret, but those feelings were gone. "Evie," he began, his voice shaking, "you have to understand that things aren't what they seem. I never wanted you to get hurt. I just wanted to protect you, protect our family." I looked at him, saying nothing for a moment, then sighed. "Protect? What do you mean, protect me by keeping everything from Lisa and your mother? You stood by them and never stood by me. Marcus, do you know how I feel? I feel betrayed. I feel like a shadow in my own life." He said nothing, just stood there, not daring to look me in the eye. "You can't blame me. I don't know what to do with my mother with everything that's going on. I love you, Evie, but I can't go against her." "Then we have nothing more to say," I replied coldly. "You have chosen to stand with her, and I have chosen to stand with my son. I cannot continue to live in this lie." Marcus was silent for a long time and finally said, "You want a divorce, right?" I didn't answer right away, but my mind was made up. I want to protect Ethan, Marcus. I don't want to stay in a marriage where we can't trust each other, and I can't let your mother continue to hurt my son. From that moment on, our relationship was never the same again. I decided to file for divorce, and I also started legal proceedings to gain custody of our child. I no longer saw Marcus as the man I loved, but as a weak, fearful person who did not dare to stand up for his family. When I decided to take this case to court, I knew I had to face Judith and Lisa, who had caused me so much pain. They had not only physically hurt me, but had also violated my parental rights. What they had done was unforgivable, and I was not going to let them off the hook. Judith, as always, was entitled to act without responsibility. She was ready to do anything to protect the so-called honor of her family. In the first meeting with her lawyer, Simone pointed out that her actions were not only a violation of her mother's rights, but also a violation of the law. I know this won't be easy, but I will not stop until justice is served. We began to gather evidence from Marcus's text messages to Lisa to his sperm storage records. These documents were not only important pieces of evidence, but also the basis for proving that Judith and Lisa's actions were intentional and calculated. Simone and I met with doctors and nurses who witnessed the incident in the delivery room and were ready to testify to Judith's violation. At the same time, I also started thinking about life after divorce. I couldn't let this pain dominate my life forever. I had to move on for Ethan and for myself. And to do that, I needed to win this fight. The legal battle officially begins, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. Judith wouldn't give up easily, but I was ready to face it all. Not just because, but because of Ethan, for my son, the person I love more than anything in this world. This fight will decide everything. It's been a month since I filed for divorce. Things are the same, but not the same. The feeling of loneliness comes over me every time I see the empty bed in my room. I no longer share my joys or sorrows with Marcus, and although I try not to think about him too much, the truth is that the wounds have not healed completely. The first day in court was a nightmare. Judith had not hesitated. She had hired a powerful team of lawyers who were willing to do anything to protect her family. But I could not give up this fight. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had to protect Ethan and face the people who had taken away my right to be a mother. The first trial was a tense affair, with Judith and her lawyers making the courtroom tense. She didn't even seem embarrassed as she repeated her false statements about me. Evelyn is not capable of being a mother. She should not raise this child because the stability of the Chen family is more important. Judith declared, her voice cold and emotionless. I heard these words and could not believe my ears. She was my mother-in-law, and she had promised to be my support when I was in trouble. But now she was trying to take away my son. Suddenly, I felt numb, but I could not let her win. I looked over at Marcus, and I saw him sitting silently, with his eyes down at the table, seemingly unable to face me. But what hurt me the most was when I realized that even though he witnessed everything that happened, he still couldn't stand by me and couldn't confront his mother. I wondered if he had been manipulated by her for too long. Suddenly, when it was my turn to speak, I felt all eyes in the room on me. I didn't know where to start. But then I remembered everything I had been through, remembered Judith storming into the delivery room, remembered the betrayal from Marcus, and I was determined not to let that pain continue. What Judith said is not true, I began, my voice firm. I am not a bad mother. I am a mother who loves my son with all my heart and soul. I have done nothing wrong, and I will not let anyone take my son away from me. I looked straight into Judith's eyes and continued. As for the frozen sperm, I will not sit idly by and let your family use these schemes to manipulate my life. I have found evidence that Marcus stored sperm and these documents will be the basis to prove that what happened in the delivery room that day was not an accident. The room was silent. Judith's lawyers stood there not knowing what to do, and I could see that even though Marcus couldn't look at me, I knew he was feeling something breaking inside, but nothing could change the truth of what I had just said. Simone, my lawyer, stood up and presented evidence of Marcus's sperm being used without my consent, and the documents were well prepared. This left Judith's lawyers with no way to deny it. Although they continued to attack, I felt for the first time in this entire battle that I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. After the trial, I went home and tried to calm down to prepare for the next struggles. But just when I thought it was all over, Marcus showed up. He came to my house late one evening as I was sitting in the living room with Ethan, my son. This time he could not avoid the confrontation I had long awaited. "Evie, you have to understand me," Marcus began, his voice hoarse. "I'm not a bad guy. I didn't mean for things to get this far. I didn't know what to do with my mother. She controlled everything in the family, and I felt caught between two worlds." I looked at him, my eyes cold and emotionless. "I understand, Marcus, but I can't accept the way you're handling things. I don't want to live in this lie anymore. I tried my best to trust you, but the secrets you've kept from me are too much. We can't continue living like this." I stood up and picked Ethan up in my arms. "You can't stand by me. You chose her. Then I have to choose a different path for me and Ethan." Marcus looked at me, his eyes filled with disappointment and regret. But I couldn't go back. I had fought too long to give up, and I couldn't let things go on like this. The story doesn't end there. Our divorce will be long, and the legal battles will be long. But one thing I know for sure is that I will never let this pain define my life. I will continue to fight for Ethan, for my son, and for myself. After the trial, I was like an empty shell walking on a road with no clear direction. The wounds in my soul had not yet healed, but I knew I could not sit still. Every day for me now was a constant struggle. A struggle to stay sane, to overcome the pain, and to be the strongest mother I could be. Ethan was the only thing that kept me going. He meant everything to me. Every smile he made, every first step he took, every stuttered word he uttered was a sign that I had done the right thing by protecting him. My son needed me, and I would never let him suffer any more pain. Life after divorce has never been easy, but I was determined not to let it break me. I moved to a small apartment not far from our old neighborhood, but enough for me to feel like I had my own space. This apartment was small, but full of love. Every morning I woke up to the sunlight streaming through the window and Ethan's laughter echoing in the small kitchen. That feeling made me realize that life is not about what we lose, but what we have left. But it wasn't without its difficulties. The loneliness was so overwhelming at times that I couldn't bear it. Everything in the new house felt different than before, and I had never felt so alone. But then I looked at Ethan's face, and I knew I had to keep going. I started to get back into freelance graphic design, which I had abandoned for years. A whole new world opened up for me, a world where I could be independent and in control of my life. Along with taking care of Ethan, I slowly rebuilt my career. Although it was not easy, at least I could stand firm and be proud of what I did. Raising Ethan alone is not easy. Every day I face new challenges. There are times when he cries because he misses his dad, and I don't know how to explain it to him. It breaks my heart. But I know I have to be strong because he needs me. I can't help but think about what happened in the past. Marcus's betrayal, Judith's manipulation, All of that left deep scars on my heart. But I also knew that I couldn't live in the past. I did what was best for Ethan and for myself. As for Marcus, I don't feel angry anymore. I just feel regret. Regret that the person I gave all my love to wasn't strong enough to stand by me when I needed him the most. Since my divorce, I have started therapy. It was not easy to sit across from a stranger and tell him all my pain. But gradually, I have learned to accept what happened, to accept the wounds in my soul. Therapy has helped me see myself more clearly and has helped me realize that I do not have to live in the darkness of the past. I have the right to be happy and loved, and I will do everything to bring a bright future for Ethan. During this time, I also found small joys in life. Peaceful mornings with my boy, intimate dates with friends, afternoon walks in the park all helped me find peace of mind. Although things may not return to normal immediately, I am starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. I cannot change what has happened, but I can control my future. Every day I learn to be stronger for myself and my son. Ethan is everything to me. He is my hope and the reason I keep fighting. He will grow up in a loving environment and I will do everything I can to protect him from the pain I have gone through. No matter how hard it is, I will not let anything stop me from loving and caring for my son. Even though I decided to divorce and cut ties with Marcus's family, I couldn't forget one important thing. Marcus and I had some happy times together, and I couldn't deny those beautiful memories. But now I know that we can't go back. The damage is too great to heal. I decided to start over completely, not because I hated Marcus, but because I loved my son more than anything. I would continue my graphic design career and build an independent, free life where Ethan and I could be happy without the torment of the past. When I look at Ethan, I know I made the right decision. He means everything to me, and I will do anything to protect my son. The future is unpredictable, but one thing I know for sure is that I will never back down. I will continue to live for what I believe in and give Ethan the best life possible. It has been a year since I decided to divorce Marcus. It was a year of challenges and pain, but also a year in which I learned a lot about myself. Life is not the same, but I feel much stronger. I am no longer the weak woman who was crushed by pain and betrayal. I am a strong mother who is willing to do anything to protect her son. The trial continues, and with each new challenge I am faced with, I feel more resilient. I cannot let my past dictate my future. I must stand up and fight not only for myself, but for Ethan, for the boy I sacrificed everything for. The day of the trial finally arrived. After months of preparation, I stood before Judith, Lisa, and Marcus. Judith had not changed. She was still the powerful woman who felt she had the right to rule over everything in the family. But this time, she could not continue to manipulate me. My attorney Simone has prepared all the necessary evidence. We have documentation of Marcus's sperm storage, statements from doctors and nurses who witnessed Judith's actions in the delivery room, and email messages from Lisa, showing that the relationship continued after Marcus married me. I remembered what Judith said in the delivery room when she screamed, "That's my daughter's baby." And now I stood in court ready to face the truth. I had no choice but to protect my son. My son is mine and no one has the right to take that away from me. Judith, as usual, refused to admit her mistakes. She still insisted that she had only done everything for the good of the family. But no one could deny that she had violated my parental rights and put my son in danger. My story had been heard and my experience had finally been acknowledged. Marcus didn't say a word during the trial. He sat there silently, unable to face me. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I knew he had changed. When the trial ended and I was about to leave, he came up to me. His eyes were no longer filled with certainty, but with disappointment and sadness. "Evie, I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. I really didn't want things to be like this. I just wanted us to be happy, but I wasn't strong enough to stand by you when you needed me the most." I looked at him with a feeling both strange and familiar. "Marcus, you chose your family over me. You can't blame anyone else. You didn't stand up for me, and now we're paying the price for that. I can't change the past, but I know one thing for sure. I can't go back to him. The wounds are too deep to heal. I don't trust him anymore, and I won't let his mistakes hurt Ethan." The court finally ruled. I won custody, and it was a victory not only for me but for Ethan. He would not have to grow up in a home filled with lies and manipulation. He would have a loving and safe environment where I would do everything I could to protect him. Judith, although disagreeing, had to accept the court's decision. She no longer had any power over my life or my son's. As for Lisa, although she tried to pull Marcus to her side, I knew that the truth had finally come out. She was no longer a danger to me. Ethan and I began to live a new life. Although things were not easy, I knew I did the right thing. Ethan grew up healthy and happy. He no longer cried silently at night because he missed his father like before. He gradually got used to his new life and understood that his mother was always there to protect him. I also rebuilt my career. I continued to freelance graphic design, and although there were initial difficulties, I knew I could overcome them. Together with Ethan, I created a new home without the ghosts of the past. One afternoon, as Ethan and I walked through the park, I realized that everything had changed. Even though we had not forgotten what had happened, I felt like I was entering a new chapter in my life. I was no longer the weak woman I had been. I was a strong mother, a resilient woman, and I had overcome it all. Ethan ran in front of me, laughing and pointing out the newly bloomed flowers. I smiled at him and felt my heart warm. The future may be unclear, but I know that we will always be together and we will get through it all. With Ethan by my side, I have no need to fear. I will always protect my son and will never let past wounds define our lives. Judith had lost everything, her power, her freedom, and her family. Lisa was left in the past. Marcus, though still Ethan's father, would never earn my trust again. As for me, I won the war not because of revenge, but because I protected what was most important to me. And that was the real victory.